Hi, I'm John Paul, and a really warm welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be continuing in conversations around bisexuality. Robyn Ochs. I mentioned Robyn and her definition of bisexuality in the first video that I did, and also when talking to Mark Cusack in the last conversation I had around it. Again, Mark used Robyn's definition. So one of the reasons why Robyn would be so well known and would be the definition that she's come up with, and hopefully you're going to hear about that and how that came about. But there are 100 things that Robyn does in terms of advocacy and activism and speaking engagements within the world of bisexuality, and has done for a long time now. So honoured to have you on, Robyn. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Generally, I would read a bio out at this point, but I just wondered if perhaps we could hear from you how you would describe yourself, I suppose, and also your journey up until now within the world of bisexuality.
So I've been doing this work for so long that it's very difficult to come up with an elevator speech.
Yes, I can imagine.
About my work. Although I was inspired when I saw the Barbie movie.
Okay.
And Ken was asked what he does for work.
Okay, I can't remember. Yes. What did you say?
At beach.
Beach.
And so then I had a flash, and I thought, I do bi. On a longer description, I travel the world speaking about bi plus identities, bisexuality, pansexuality, queer, other complex non-binary sexualities. I do general LGBTQIA plus education. Yeah, so I speak about all kinds of different topics. And then I also edit a publication called Bi Women Quarterly, which is in its 43rd year of publication, I believe.
Wow, fantastic.
Continuous publication. It's the oldest and only currently bi plus women's publication in the world.
Well, as you say, I mean, it's been decades that you've been involved in this world. It'd be interesting to know how things have changed.
Well, so I came out as bisexual 49 and a half years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the world was a very different place then.
Mm.
In every way, probably, but definitely in regard to LGBTQIA plus people. So when I came out as bi, there was no visibility. There was virtually no visibility. And another factor I think that influenced everything was that we didn't have the internet yet. And so back in the 1980s, when I was starting my bisexual activism, we didn't have the tools to communicate with other people in other places, to organize amongst ourselves. If we wanted to hold a meeting, we had to put up posters.
Right.
Or do a phone tree, like calling people on the phone, and there were no answering machines. So if they didn't answer, you had to keep calling until they did. And we had to do physical mailings. And so it was very different, very difficult to organize. So as a result, for the most part, we didn't know what was happening in other parts of the country or the world. And we came up with our own understandings of things very locally. It was a very different environment. There were times, of course, when somebody would move from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then ideas would transmit. And then finally, in the mid-1980s, there started to be conferences. I think the first one in the US was in 1983, East Coast Bisexual Conference, and it was held in Connecticut in the US. And I managed to go to it. I did not organize it. I went to it. And then the next year we organized one in Boston. And so like all the work we did was just so grassroots and so local and so specific. And over time, we started organizing more nationally and more globally. But again, the work was very, very difficult. It was very hard to communicate without the internet. You know, finally in the 90s, we have the beginning of the internet, and things change, and we can communicate with people in the Netherlands and people in, you know, a host of other countries, and it's a different conversation. So that's one huge change. Also, back when I started doing my organizing, you know, the lesbian separatist movement was pretty strong still. And there were many, many, many women who just did not want to have anything to do with women who had anything to do with men.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
that was a big challenge. And there was also we didn't have the understanding yet of trans and non-binary identities either. I mean, there was a little bit, but we really, I mean, when you look at the bigger picture, we just didn't have that information on any kind of large scale. And so I think as you unpack gender, by definition, you have to unpack sexuality.
I mean, from the beginning, you were organizing, and I guess so there was activism really from the beginning. Might sound like a strange question, but what would have motivated you?
So I came out to myself as bisexual right around my 18th birthday.
Okay.
And I didn't think I knew anyone else who identified as bi. And I heard lots of negative things said about bi people. Lots of negative things, like I would never date a bisexual, or they'll just leave you, for all that nonsense. And I had heard just so much negative stuff. And so I knew I identified as bi, but I honestly didn't know how to operationalize being bi. I didn't know how to be a bisexual person in the world. I really couldn't imagine how to share that information. I was terrified of what would happen if I did. I had this conviction that if I told anyone I was bi, they wouldn't love me anymore. That was so powerful. And I don't know, it's really hard to say exactly where that came from, because I heard some negative things, but not usually from people I care deeply about. But I think it was more the silence. I just didn't know. I didn't know. And I think at that time of my life, I was also deeply insecure in a number of other ways. So I didn't have that firm sense of confidence about myself. And so I just felt that I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know if I could do it, and I was afraid of the repercussions if I did. So I didn't. I stayed silent for 5 years, which is deeply unhealthy.
Yes, which we may come on to, the kind of challenges around it, and the mental health in terms of bi people, bi plus people.
Yeah, I mean, for 5 years, I just suffocated in my own silence, and it was awful. It was awful. And then finally, 5 years later, in 1983, in the winter, I was working at a group home, at a residential facility for folks with developmental disabilities, and I was doing an evening overnight shift, and one of my coworkers sat me down at the kitchen table, and she said, "Robyn, can we talk?" And I said, "Sure." And we sat down, and she said that she was bisexual. And I blurted out, "So am I." And I had never said it out loud before. And I experienced such a powerful sense of relief. And, the world didn't end. There wasn't a thunderclap. She just smiled and said, "Oh." And that was that. It wasn't even a big conversation, but it was so important to me. And I think that was the moment when I realized how heavy silence is. I felt physically as though a large boulder had been lifted off of my shoulders or my head. Like I felt this weight lifted.
Yeah.
I felt this feeling of lightness, almost the same feeling that if you're carrying a heavy sleeping child for a long period of time and you finally put it down and you just feel light.
Completely. And all the things you're frightened of that you thought might happen don't happen. And in fact, I guess it was a good experience with her. It would have been connecting, I imagine.
It was great. It was great. I'm so grateful to her. And I think for me, it was the beginning of my own journey, of the next stage of my journey. But I think it was also a really powerful reminder or learning that other people can be beacons in very important ways, that by coming out to someone else, by sharing your experience with someone else, you may be doing it for yourself, but you also may be opening a door for them, which happens to me all the time. I come out to people for fun sometimes because I'm much more confident now.
When you say for fun, what do you mean?
Okay, going through airport security.
Okay.
And there's a couple in front of me on the queue, and they say, "Oh, are you traveling for work?" And I say, "Yes, I am." and they say, oh, what do you do for work? And I say, oh, I give programs on LGBTQIA plus education, or occasionally I say bisexual, but that's very specific, but I'll just talk about what I do just a little bit. And almost inevitably, what happens is that that person goes, oh my God, my son is gay, or my mother is a lesbian, or my cousin is trans, or my best friend from college, or it's a doorway experience. This is a funny airport experience. Another one. I was on this flight. We volunteered to get bumped, and they drove us to it. It was in Wisconsin. They drove us to another airport, and I was talking to this guy the whole time. He was really nice. This like guy, maybe in his 30s. He was like all dressed up like fancy businessman, expensive suit, and I mean, not the kind of person I would normally get to meet. So we're just talking and talking and sitting next to each other and chatting and chatting. And he's asking me about my work, and I was like, at first I was nervous a little bit, like how is he going to respond? But I thought, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're chatting the whole time, and he's very friendly. He's asking me lots of questions. And then just before we get on the plane, he opens up his wallet and he says, this is my husband.
Right.
And this is my daughter.
Mm.
And I was like, you, he was playing me the whole time. But it was, again, it was that wonderful thing. Like,
Yeah.
you open the door and people will come through. It's only about, I would say, 1% to 2% of the times when I do that I get a negative reaction. Like one time I was on a plane. I have lots of airplane stories. I was on a plane. This one woman
spent a lot of time on airplanes. Yeah.
I used to, yeah.
Yeah.
This one woman looked like, she actually looked as though I had vomited in her lap. Like she just, when I said it, and she's just like as if it's possible to create distance between two people sitting next to each other on a plane. She managed to do that. But most of the time I just get such good responses. And so I'm grateful to Joanne for being a beacon, and that's the woman who came out to me. Like, I'm grateful to her for being a beacon, and I'm also grateful to her for reminding me that we can do that.
It's interesting because when I was talking to Mark Cusack, actually, something that some people would say to me, if they're, for example, within straight-facing or passing relationships, different genders within straight-facing relationships, they might say, why would I? Why would I do that? And I was saying to Mark, I mean, coming out and tell people, or their partner as well, and perhaps we can come on to that. I mean, really, with what you've said and the experience that you had with talking about it and telling another person how transformative that was. But one of the things he was saying about why he went to immediately, well, for others to be a role model for his nephew who may experience something similar, or just people generally in the world. I was reading or listening to Rob Cohen's book about bisexual men within straight-facing or passing relationships. And yeah, a number of the things in there, somebody was saying about he's a teacher and you know, having a teacher who would come out for the students as well, to see that there were people in positions of responsibility and authority is hugely, hugely powerful. And I can really, I mean, it would absolutely is. And that's what happens, and people do that is an amazing thing. The thing that I've said, which comes back to what you were saying really about, is the fear around it, isn't it? Most people have an internal intrinsic fear. Where we pick that up from, I think that's interesting what you say. It wasn't necessarily your immediate family, but there was somehow you got those messages that it was to be feared, and therefore our natural thing is to survive, isn't it? Rather, we're dominated by survival rather than necessarily being happy. So it really takes something, I think, huge in terms of somebody's internal resources to sort of overcome that survival.
Yeah, and role modeling, it means so much. I have 18 nibblings.
18
of my siblings, the children of my siblings.
I like that.
6 of them are chosen, and 12 of them are actual like legal family members.
Okay.
And I think one of the biggest gifts I've given to all of them is just to be myself in public.
Completely.
And that's a gift to the straight ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a gift to those who identify as part of the LGBTQIA plus community. I do have several who identify as bi.
Mhm.
and one who identifies as non-binary. And I really believe that the biggest gift, one of the biggest gifts I've given them is just to be myself, and the fact that
Yeah.
they've known me their whole lives.
Completely. I mean, I think it's the greatest gift you can give yourself and others around you, isn't it? To be yourself. But it can be so hard to do for people. It can be so hard, can't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I do respect that for some people it's not safe. It may be physically unsafe.
Mm.
It may be emotionally unsafe. And I'm not the kind of person, I used to be the kind of person, but I'm no longer the kind of person who says, oh, why doesn't everybody just come out? Because, people have different circumstances. I respect that. I really do respect that now. But I also believe that those of us who can should think very seriously about doing so, because
Mm.
it is a gift to others.
Mm.
Thinking about the coming out question too, I edited an anthology called Getting By. And one of the essays that still sits with me is a woman named Elizabeth Andrew, who talks about just that coming out is a gift to those she loves, that being herself, showing them who she really is an act of love. It's a gift.
Mm.
And that when you hide who you are, you really can't be fully close. You can be close and comfortable and have a nice, fun relationship, but you're not really 100% there.
Yeah, particularly around something like sexuality, isn't it? Such a part of people's identity as well, that they never know that they can be fully loved by another person, doesn't it?
And so when she wrote that, and it just impacted me, that idea that, yeah, that is in fact,
Mm.
it's not a punishment to someone, it's a gift to someone to share that information. And
Mm.
then there was a young woman who in her early 20s who also wrote an essay about coming out to her. She shared the letter she wrote to her family,
Mm.
and it had that similar tone, like she was coming out to them because she loved them
Mm.
and because she wanted them to know her in her fullness. And I don't know, both of those really taught me something.
I guess, people's paths are going to be different too. I was reading something, it talked about highlighting the diverse paths people take in search of fulfillment, because people have different personalities, and what is authentic and congruent for somebody about their path to living by plus identity, because it will be different for different people. I guess I wouldn't want someone to be not doing something or avoiding something because of shame or fear. I know it's a part of life, isn't it? But also then, if that is overcome, what then is somebody's authentic way of living it? That's also because people have different experiences of being bi, I suppose, as far as sexual attraction, romantic attraction to genders. So I think that's an interesting thing as well. If somebody does accept, or in terms of self-acceptance, that for example, with your definition, that they would resonate with that definition, there is that, and then what? How does that get lived? And I suppose that's a journey and a process as well for people, isn't it?
Yeah. Should I share the definition?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'll start by just prefacing, but I'll preface this by saying that I did not invent this definition by myself up in a garret somewhere, writing all alone. It's a community informed definition. I would put out a definition at one of my speaking engagements, and I'd get feedback. And people would say, have you thought about this? But what about this? And it's the definition evolved as a result of other people's input. And so I feel like it is in fact a community informed definition that I wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
And I navigated, but it was with the help of a lot of different people's thought processes. So the definition that I wrote down
Mm-hmm.
and is, I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one gender, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily in the same way, and not necessarily to the same degree.
Mm-hmm.
And every single word of that is really important. Like I call myself, because I believe that identity is about self-naming.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody could be technically bisexual and that they can have multi-gender attraction, but they might not identify that way. And I think one of the things that I've noticed happens sometimes in the community of people who talk about this topic is that we're not all using the same premise. Like some people are talking about bisexuality as a behavior
Sure.
in a more like hard science kind of way. Other people might be talking about it as an identity. We need to be clear about what we're talking about. So my work is very much about what people choose to call themselves. The whole idea of potential, like I identified as bi for 5 years before I ever acted on it.
Sure.
I had only dated men. To be attracted romantically and or sexually. And again, I learned from students like this, that they're not the same thing. Like growing up, I didn't have a distinction between those two categories in my own self-understanding. But young people these days, like that's kind of core.
Yeah. And it has those components, the definition, doesn't it, of potential, which is I think, such a helpful way of looking at it as well. I mean, just from the fact that it is a potential in terms of different genders, but also I think words like potential, capacity, sort of breadth, they have more favorable connotations. I think, to think in terms of a capacity to love, be sexually attracted to all genders, and a potential, I think suddenly turns it from something that somebody might be ashamed of or hiding, or that it's threatening or problematic, to something which can be celebrated or beautiful, even in some ways extraordinary.
Yeah. And it's an openness. And I think that one of the things that happens is that because other people hear, if you call yourself bisexual, what other people hear is, oh, you're having sex with everybody. Like they make this enormous leap from an identity word to presuming a series of behaviors. And that's one of the things that makes people afraid to come out. And one of the things I say in my speaking engagement sometimes is that when I tell you I identify as bisexual, what do you now know about me? What do you know about my relationship history?
Interesting.
What do you know about my sexual history? What do you know about my current relationship status or my current sexual status? Nothing. What you do know is how I understand myself, how I choose to identify myself.
Because there will be these, as you say, projections that come in a vacuum, really, isn't it? There will be messages out there as well. But do people answer that to you? Do they say what they imagine is the
I
case
think it's
about you?
clarifying. I think it really helps people just to understand that, like in any identity, like you can identify as straight and never have been in a relationship with anyone else.
Sure.
But that doesn't make you any less straight. And that also you don't have to be currently doing things to identify as something. Like I often give the example of my mom too, who hasn't been in a romantic or sexual, to my knowledge, relationship in a couple of decades. And nobody has ever said to her, well, you can't call yourself straight if you're not currently doing straight, right?
Yeah.
Nobody would ever even imagine saying something like that to her. Well, maybe now they would, because I just planted that seed. But that straight people don't get challenged in the same way that we do, and even lesbian and gay people don't get challenged in the same way. They get challenged a little bit if they've had no experience, but bisexual people get challenged all the time. Like, well, you're in a relationship with someone of this gender. Aren't you therefore now straight or gay? Like, doesn't that make you that? Like, or I know you said you were bisexual last year, but are you still bisexual? Like, what about now? What about now? Like, there's this constant need to re-up your identity and reaffirm it, and it's constantly being challenged. I think that's one of the hard things about identifying as bi.
In terms of stigma and that kind of thing, and the challenges that you would have seen and heard from people around you as well, I have talked about it in the last video too, the kind of mental health challenges and the fear and the shame and those things. But what are your reflections on that? And has that changed a bit, would you say?
I think the challenges, of course, depend on the context. Like there are challenges of identifying as bi in the workplace. There are challenges of identifying as bi in a romantic relationship. There are challenges of identifying as bi just in general to your friends. Like I think there's different challenges depending on the context. But I think that with relationships, with a significant relationship, one of the challenges could be that your partner might feel that you're identifying as bi as a threat. That if you insist on identifying as bi, even though you're in a relationship with them, does that mean you're not fully committed to the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean you're looking around, for something better or different or more? And that's a big challenge. That can be a really big, that perceived relationship threat
Mm-hmm.
can be a huge challenge. And I think it also in part explains some of the higher levels of intimate partner violence that bisexual people experience.
Yes, I mean, you were talking about romantic relationships there. When I was listening to Rob's book, he was saying, or somebody said in the book, it may have been him, I never know with an audio book actually, because it's a series of stories that people are telling about themselves as well. But I think he was saying that he thinks it's necessary to tell a romantic partner or somebody who you're in a relationship with. Again, if you're looking at the kind of journey and how it's lived and how it's integrated into life. What would you say about that?
I think I would say the same thing I said earlier, which is that to be really close to someone, if you're not out to someone who's very close to you, then there's a barrier between the two of you.
Mm.
That said, I do understand why some people choose not to disclose. And one of the things that can happen is some people come out while they're in a relationship.
Mm.
They come out to themselves, they come to an awareness of themselves. And you might not be ready to share it because you're still trying to figure it out. But the longer you don't share it, the more negative the response might be that you didn't share it. Like, what do you mean you identified that way for 2 years and you didn't tell me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there could be that, right?
Yeah.
But I completely understand. It took me 5 years to share that information. I wasn't in a relationship that would have created that challenge, but I wasn't ready. If I had been, I don't think I would have been able to share it. And then, of course, there's questions of, for some people, there's questions of like, once you know that about yourself, what do you do about it?
Yeah.
Do you do anything about it? Like for many people, it's sufficient just to acknowledge it and embrace it and own it. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Other people may feel that they need to explore this new understanding of themselves
Sure.
in some way. And then that, of course, that creates all kinds of relationship conversations and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that every relationship, they need to figure out what works for them. I'm sure Rob did justice that. He's wonderful, by the way. He's a
Yes. I mean, the book, I think his book is great. It's extraordinary, really, what he's done, it's hours and hours long of all these different stories. I think it's amazing. And also his narration around it and his observations. I just think it's great. Yeah.
I haven't read it yet.
Right.
But
Well,
I've listened to some of his podcasts, and
yeah.
I've been on Two Bi Guys on the podcast that he runs, and he's just phenomenal. He's just wonderful. He's great.
Yes. Speaking to him tomorrow evening, I'm speaking to him. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for him. He's a very wise. And
yes. I mean, that's, I suppose, in some ways, talking about that podcast and that idea of community as well. Something you were saying, something that will have been enabled a lot more with the internet will be community too, won't it? I mean, activism as well. I mean, those two are probably very close together too. But the kind of support that somebody might need or want in terms of community, something which I'll hear quite a lot from people is they just don't know about community and where to find people. So I just wonder if we could spend a bit of time looking at that as well. What do you think would be helpful things for people to know, I suppose, as far as community?
Well, first of all, let's start with podcasts. I believe that the silence on this topic historically has been deafening. It has been absolutely overwhelming, and I'm so excited to see different people out there using their voice and creating forums for people to have conversations. Two Bi Guys is an example. What you're doing is a really great example. There's Bisexual Killjoy podcast now.
Okay. Yeah.
Is two people in Boston, and they're doing a great job with that, and they're trying to take academic stuff out into the wild, like to try to talk about academic ideas in a way that is more accessible.
Oh,
And
academic research about bi plus, do you mean? Or,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
they're both academic heads, and they're doing a really good job. So I think that there's I just think that these conversations, that somebody could listen to a whole series of conversations on this topic, that's community right there. Because you're hearing different voices, you're realizing that whatever it is you're experiencing, some people have similar or overlapping experiences, other people have different experiences, that being bisexual means a whole lot of different things to a whole lot of different people, but getting to hear what some of those things are, and hopefully, like, I when I edit By Women Quarterly, that's also a community. And I've had people who have written to me and said, this is my community, like this is my one source of
Could you tell us a
connection.
bit about it, By Women Quarterly, and what's in it and what it's like?
Sure. By Women Quarterly is it puts the grass in grassroots. It's a very,
Okay.
very, very low budget publication. I don't get paid for my work. I've been editor now since 2009, I believe. And it's an act of love. It's a quarterly publication, and every issue has a theme. The theme of this current issue coming out is finding community.
Okay, is it? What a coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just invite people to submit essays, poetry, short fiction, visual art, reviews, all kinds of stuff. We just invite people to throw stuff in. And in the past few years, we've gone global. It used to be 90% US with an occasional, with one or two things from other countries. And now it's much more mixed. Like the proportion is changing. I think we'll have 9 or 10 countries represented in this next issue.
Fantastic.
And we try really hard to do that because there aren't similar resources elsewhere. And so my hope, and so this actually connects with what we're talking about. My hope is that anyone, anywhere, who identifies as bi plus, woman, non-binary, also men, can go to our website and find somebody who shares significant aspects of their experience, whether they're also from Nigeria, whether they are also 80 years old, whether they also are married, living in the suburbs with 3 children, whether they also identify as trans, like whatever it is. I just want people to feel that they can see, whether they're a college student, like I want people to be able to see themselves reflected. I also try really hard to make sure that we have brand new writers, brand new contributors. Every issue, I really want to make sure there are people in there who have never been published before. Have that whole range. I don't want people to say, oh, if I'm not already great at this or so experienced in this, then I don't belong in these pages. I want everybody to feel that they have a right to be heard. So that's By Women Quarterly, and I love it. I absolutely love it. We give it away for free.
Brilliant. Does it come through as a magazine, or is it online? How is it?
Yes, to both. We print some physical copies. Those go mostly to youth groups, community centers, LGBTQ centers around the US. And then we also have it online both as a PDF, so people could see the same exact thing that's printed, but in color.
Okay.
And it's also a magazine format, so they can go to the homepage and click on a specific article and just read it. And it's free. It's free. We do not charge, and all of our income comes from donations.
Amazing. Yeah.
Unfortunately, not enough donations, but enough to keep.
Okay. Well, if anybody wants to donate, we will put a link below the video. Yeah.
That would be awesome. There's actually a give out day coming up, which is a month-long fundraising opportunity.
Brilliant.
To get more than half of our annual income usually. But it's again, we're small. We operate on hope and love and a little tiny bit of money, and we just create this amazing community of ideas and thoughts. So
we will put a link to that, and hopefully people can go and take a look. When we were speaking before, you also mentioned the Bi Plus Forum.
Yes. So there also, I was actually about to go in the exact same direction. So
Okay. Yeah.
there are some kind of fixed resources that provide a sense of community, listening to podcasts, reading online publications, the blogs. There are lots and lots of websites and YouTube things and Facebook groups, and like there's lots and lots of stuff out there.
Yeah.
For face-to-face connections, there are also online resources. For example, we do BiPlus World meetups quarterly. I coordinate with people from BiPlus Netherlands, and Barbara Oud, who's one of their staff people, and she's amazing. She and I co-facilitate these quarterly meetups. They're 2 hours long. People from any country welcome to come. So if somebody typed in BiPlus World Meetup, they could find that online. And you can also put on your site. There's, like in Boston during COVID, we started, we had in-person brunches at people's houses. We would just go to someone's house and share a meal, and everybody would bring a dish, potluck. And I'm explaining what that is because I still remember when I went to the UK in 1990 and I said the word potluck, and my friend Allison said, "What's that?"
Yes.
And they started doing them also, but they called them American potlucks.
Okay.
So potluck.
Yes, not as familiar here.
Fish.
Yes, the only person I went to, somebody did it recently actually, but she was American, so you bought whatever. People were like, "What if we bring the same thing?" But it all seems to work out, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mostly. One time we had one and everybody brought bagels, but usually it works out.
Presumably everybody liked bagels, so it was fun. So.
There were a lot of bagels.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So we for years, starting in the 1980s, we did these monthly. We would just organize this like I actually just hosted one last weekend at my house, and I put it out on our group list, our email list, and anybody who wants to come just RSVPs, lets me know, and then I send them my address, and they come, and we hang out for 3 hours and eat food, and we talk, and we have one little part where we actually sit in a circle and talk. And I usually whoever hosts it gets to pose a question to the group.
Amazing. And is it generally around bisexuality or BiPlus, or is it just how things are in the world, how people are feeling about themselves?
It can be anything, yeah, and it can be all those things, yeah. So then just we talk. So people go around, introduce themselves, and talk about that thing, and then we just people chat, and just like as at any party, people stand around and they talk. Like there's some people here, some people there, and it's just lovely, and it's a really nice way to build community. But during COVID, of course, everything shut down.
Yeah,
and what we did here in Boston is I started digital brunches.
Okay.
So that was just simply a 90-minute shared meal, except there's not really, you can bring food if you want, like here's my food. And you just chat. And again, same thing, like anyone can come. But one of the things that was different was that people could come from anywhere because it's on Zoom.
Yeah.
And that was very nice. We did that during COVID, but after COVID, not that we're after COVID yet, but after the shutdown part of COVID, we decided to continue it because, first of all, there were people who were geographically isolated. There's one woman who comes who lives in a very, very tiny rural area in France. We have someone who comes from Mexico. We have someone who comes from the UK, like just different people from different countries. And it's mostly people in the US, but we're spread East Coast, West Coast, a little bit of the Midwest, and it's different people each time. And some people come to almost all of them. And it's just nice. And again, we have little discussion topics, breakout rooms. We do 2 breakout rooms, but it's just a chance for people to talk.
Completely. And I suppose even if you're not talking about BiPlus issues, it's just everybody knows that everybody else is BiPlus. So that is so powerful, isn't it?
It's hugely powerful. And just the fact to be in a space where your identity is not contested and it will not be contested is really good. And I do try to make sure that there are 2 breakouts each meeting. And so I try to say, okay, one of them is going to be, sometimes we'll talk about harder stuff. And then I always end up with talking about lighter stuff, like that people leave feeling inspired. Some of it's focused on what we can actually do to respond to the world at the present time. Some of it's focused on details or aspects of our identities. but there's different topics, but it's just a wonderful chance for people to talk to other people. And it's funny because I get to do that all the time.
Mm.
And I sometimes have to remind myself that some people don't get to do that at all.
Ever. Yeah. Mm.
And that how valuable this space is. Someone who came to the brunch last weekend, I saw a post she made, and she said, "This is the first time I just had my first experience ever being in a room full of other people who all identified as bisexual."
Wow. Yeah.
And it can be really powerful. So anyway, so we're doing the digital brunches still because just some people really need it. And also it could be people who have physical health issues who can't be around groups of people, or who are taking care of an elder or a child, or like there are lots of reasons why people can't come to the physical ones, or they're just not comfortable. Some people are
Yes.
very introverted, and maybe a small group
Mm.
thing on Zoom is more comfortable. So anyway, I think that all this stuff really matters. Just being face to face with each other is so important. And it's interesting that for me, even after almost 50 years, I still find it nourishing. It's a good dose of vitamin B plus. Like every time I'm in a space like that, I do feel good. I feel affirmed. I feel
Mm.
a little bit nourished. I've been speaking now since the mid 1980s.
Mm.
So 40 years. And getting to speak, especially in other countries, is so precious.
Mm.
And it's very easy to be in your own little corner of the world doing your work, and it's easy to feel like you're the only one who cares, or you
Mm.
meaning you, a small group of people.
Mm.
And I think when I get to go to Norway or Sweden or Peru or other countries or Australia and see people doing similar work in their own communities, not
Mm.
similar but different, right? Because every place is different. I don't know, it just makes me feel so connected, and it makes me realize that there are actually a lot of us.
Mm.
There are a lot of us doing local work.
Yeah.
And I learned from what they're doing. Hopefully I share useful information that might help them,
Yeah.
what they're doing. And it's a wonderful feeling of connection. And it's
Mm.
global. It's global. Like we are doing this stuff in a lot of different places. And yeah, so I've spoken I try to go to at least 2 other countries every year.
Amazing. Okay.
So I haven't been to, like, I don't think they're going to bring me to Afghanistan,
Sure.
but
Mm.
I would go.
I'm sure.
I will go anywhere for airfare and hotel for a week, just because I want to get my work out there, and I
Yeah,
feel it's really important.
I'm sure. It's
And
amazing. Yeah.
in the US, I enjoy speaking at like progressive, you know, liberal arts universities,
Mm.
but I love speaking at community colleges, and I love speaking in the red states and the more conservative parts of the country. I love speaking in small town places because I feel that it makes more of a difference there,
Mm-hmm.
because the conversations aren't already happening there to the same extent. And so if I can get in there, and if people
Mm.
are willing to invite me in to have a conversation, I'll go. I think that there are a lot of people who really have, they want to do the right thing. They want to
Yeah.
support, they want to,
Mm.
but they don't have the vocabulary. They may not have the vocabulary, and that's not their fault. That's not
Mm.
their fault. If we're not taught, we don't know what we're not taught.
Yeah.
We don't know what we haven't had access to. And so I start with that assumption that people have lots of gaps in their understanding, and it's not because they're terrible people. It's because our systems of sharing out information are deeply flawed.
Yeah.
And so I presume that anyone who's coming to hear me speak is coming because they want to do something about that. Because
Mm.
we're not responsible for what we were never taught. But once we realize there are gaps
Absolutely.
in our understanding, then I think we
Yeah.
should take on a responsibility to try to fill those gaps. So that's my understanding, is that people are there to
Mm.
fill those gaps. And just at the end of my programs, I'm hoping that they come out just with a clearer frame with better understanding with some language.
I think people might wonder about saying the wrong thing, or that offense thing, isn't it? But once somebody has a preferred an alternative, then it's choice, isn't it? As you say, people are taught one particular thing, that's one thing, isn't it? But if you hear an alternative, then somebody is choosing to.
Yeah, and if you understand that, it's so powerful. And the other thing I love to share with people is just that how many people are identifying as LGBTQIA plus now. Like and I show this one chart that's phenomenal. It's by generation. It's US data, but I think it's actually pretty, similar to other parts of the world. But of people in my age group, in the oldest age group, 1 point something% identify as LGBT. They use LGBT as LGBT. People in my age group, I'm a young baby boomer. So people born between 1946 and 1964. It's 2 point something%.
Yep.
For the next generation, which is millennials, it's currently 11-12%, something like that. For the next generation, no, it's like 8%, then like 11%. And then for Gen Z, it's close to 25%. I think it's 23% now. And just looking at the generational differences also helps us understand why there are gaps in our knowledge, because when I came out as bi, we actually were pretty unusual.
Yeah, completely.
Now we are not. And just seeing the generational gaps. And I also show the chart over time. And just like, it's just phenomenal how things are changing, how things are going amongst younger generations, amongst Gen Silent, the elders, and not so much around the boomers, but millennials and Gen X and Gen Z are growing tremendously. And the reason that they're growing, to come back to bisexuality, is in large part due to the huge increase in the percentage of people identifying specifically as bisexual. Right now, most of people who identify as LGBTQ plus identify as bisexual.
It's a huge number, isn't it? And it really does not equate to the visibility of it, which is, but for reasons probably that we've touched on.
And for me, like, I feel like if young people know that 23% of their generation identify as LGBTQ plus, and that most of those identify as bi plus, if you're a young bisexual person or a young pansexual person, that's nourishing. That's affirming. Like, you may feel like you're alone. You may not know who else identifies the way you do, but just knowing that there are a large number of people who do.
Even to know the numbers, you necessarily even have to meet someone, but there's something about knowing those numbers, isn't there?
Yeah. Okay. 1 in 4. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know which ones you are, but I know you're there.
But it's one of you.
And that increases the likelihood that if I disclose my identity to you, that you're gonna get excited, not upset, but excited, like that you'll have a positive reason.
I mean, is there a piece of advice that you would give to someone in kind of early stages in terms of having a bi plus identity?
Well, one of the things I do say is that identity is a journey. As you travel through your life, you will gain more information about yourself. And that information may confirm what you already think you know about yourself, or it may lead you to change how you understand yourself. But that's okay. Like, the identity is not, like, being uncertain is not a flaw, it's a feature. Like, that it's fine to live with uncertainty. It's also fine to try things on. Like, that you're not signing a life contract. And if your understanding of yourself changes, that's fine. Because there's so much pressure to be certain, and I think that's dangerous. So that's one thing I would say, is just, it's absolutely fine to be on your journey, whatever that journey looks like. And there are some people who have absolute clarity from the first day. That's fine too. But for many other people, it's a continuum of complexity, right? And so just validating that, I think just knowing the data is just super, 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 super important for people. I think also I do a lot of my work focuses on where biphobia and bi-erasure come from. And my theory is that it's not really about bi people. It's
Mhm.
about frames that other people try to impose on us that are flawed, like binary thinking, for example.
Yeah.
And so many of the stereotypes about bisexuality are based on the idea that there's actually a binary of two real things and nothing else exists.
Reminds me of an interesting question. I was listening to something called Bisexual Brunch, I think it is, and I was listening to that, and the guy who presents it, Ashley, asked somebody whether there were any sort of particular personality traits that they might have noticed in bi people. And I just wondered whether you might have noticed that. Of course, all human beings are unique, and people will identify at different places along a continuum in terms of their bi plus identity as well. But do you notice anything as far as that sort of potential breadth, capacity, those things, as far as the qualities of human beings as well?
Oh, well, I mean, I'll say that the people who come to community, I think bisexual people are just like everybody else. Some of us are closed-minded, some of us are open-minded. We're all kinds of different things. We have all
Mm,
kinds of different political positions. Like we're all over the place.
mm,
Some of us are asexual, some of us are very sexual, and again, that's a continuum too. Some of us want no relationships, some of us want a monogamous relationship, some of us want polyamorous relationships. Like some people may want different things at different points in their life. So we're people like every other person.
yeah.
But I do believe one thing I do see is that people who come to bi plus community, who get involved, I would say overall tend to be less judgmental,
Mm,
more open-minded, more accepting of differences. Like I love being part of a community where all those different people can coexist. Like I love being part of a community where like people have lots of different relationships types,
mhm,
or they may not be in one, but maybe that's what they're hoping for someday. Like just the idea that that's okay. Like so you do you, I'll do me,
mhm.
and that not that lack of drawing judgment over other people. Like oh, everybody should be just like me. I've been pretty impressed at how we're able to hold space for a wide variety of different choices in life. Overall, we're doing a really good job
Mhm.
of accepting people at various parts of their own journey
Mm.
and people who choose different ways of living and having relationships. And I'm very proud of that. Like I love that about us.
I mean, it's been so interesting, Robyn. I mean, the job that you're doing, so extraordinary, amazing. Thank you so much for what you do. I mean, I do often ask people, when I speak to them, about a piece of life advice.
That there are a lot of people out there doing their own creative projects, like
Mm,
what you're doing. I love it. Like there are people who are taking initiative and creating things. And that's, I think, one other piece of advice I would give to
mm.
people is if what you are looking for doesn't exist, you can create it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I've talked to people who, for example, they live in a city or a town where there's no bi plus community.
Mm,
You can create a meetup.
mm,
And it's possible that you might sometimes be sitting by yourself knitting or reading your book, but people might show up and like over time people show up and the other thing that I would say is that there are people who don't actually partake of whatever it is you're creating, but they're getting value from it. So a quick story,
mm,
a good ending story is that a long time ago before the internet, we were putting up posters. I was putting up posters for a meeting we were having, a bi women's meeting. And I went into the bookstore and I put up a poster and this woman came rushing out after me. And she said, excuse me, did you just put up that poster? And I said, yes, I did. And she said, thank you.
mm,
Thank you. Thank you for putting up that poster. Thank you for organizing that meeting. And she said, I've never been to any of your meetings, and I will probably never go to any of your meetings. But knowing that those meetings are happening makes me feel validated and
completely.
supported. So thank you so much. And she just rushed off. And so I know that like when students, for example, are organizing on their campuses and they put up a sign for a meeting or they post online about a meeting, they don't even know who they're impacting, but the fact of their very existence is meaningful to people they will never meet.
Completely. It's such an important thing, isn't it, to hold in mind. If I think of something like a YouTube video, for some people, I think the reason why there's a lot of space or not demand, but for things around bisexuality on YouTube is people are looking, aren't they, for that sort of community in some ways, and to hear other people talk about it. I just think even to tap a like on a video, he says, but is somehow for someone, it's going out into the world, isn't it? It's given, something's living, something is given expression. So it can even be, even if they would never talk to anybody else about it, there are all these ways, aren't there, of somehow, somewhere, living it, having a relationship, I suppose, with that part of self. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a message, an email the other day from someone who had read one of the essays on the website.
Mm.
And she was like, I can't believe that person had the same story as me. And and she was just going on and on, and she said, can you put me in touch? And I forwarded her message to the other person. I don't know what happened after that, because that's up to the other person, if the writer, if she chose to respond. But I just thought that's really important. Like, it was something very specific, and this person saw themselves reflected.
Just can be life-changing, can't it? Those sorts of moments. Thank you so much. I mean, Robyn, it's been amazing. You are such an inspiration, I'm sure, to so many people. Thank you for everything that you do and for coming on here specifically to talk about things. I really appreciate it. We will put links below to anything and everything that we've talked about.
It's my pleasure, and it's really been lovely talking to you.
Fantastic.
With you, not to you, with you.
Thanks, Robyn.